at the Youngstown Historical Center for Industry and Labor, and tonight we were listening to the lecture from Justin Gest, who is the author of The New Minority, a book about the struggles of the white working class in Great Britain and here in the United States, and most particularly in Youngstown, Ohio. Tim, why do you think it was important to bring Mr. Gest here tonight, and how do you think this topic relates very directly to this area, to its history, and to its politics?
Well, I think a couple of things here. Justin spent 6 months in Youngstown, and he was doing field work. So he talked to, 75 or more Youngstown residents about their sense of loss, about how they felt their place in the national political scene was sort of slipping. And we really wanted to get him here the night before this election in particular, because this is a book about the perception of lost power on the white working class. This is an election that has been marked by, sort of a pandering to the white working class, right? So we felt that the timing was right, the topic was right, and certainly Justin's qualifications were right. So that's why we brought him here. We thought it was a great way to kick off the Center for Working Class Studies lecture series.
Why Youngstown, Ohio? How did you go about deciding when you decided to do this project? How did you go about picking these particular locations, and especially Youngstown?
Sure. Well, I think one thing is first to be very clear. I couldn't predict the future. I actually started this book 5 years ago, way before anyone envisioned a Trump nomination. Way before anyone thought about Britain leaving the European Union. This was a subject that I was interested in, the marginality of white working class people. And so from that perspective, Youngstown was a natural choice because I think it was emblematic of the struggle that white working class people have experienced over the generations. And Youngstown, unfortunately, has some of the highest concentrated poverty in the country right now. It suffered an enormous collapse in the manufacturing era, and to understand how it was building its economy and putting its society back together to the extent that it was of interest.
And when you started the project, what did you want to get across with this particular book?
I don't usually come into my books with an agenda. I like, one of the cool things about being grassroots and ethnographic and through methods is that you really get to let the people speak for themselves. And in vast parts of the book, you just have open quotes, oral histories in some cases, of people telling their stories and people sharing their views. And I think that's what's special, is that you're kind of piecing together a quilt of people's memory, but also people's perspectives about politics and their society. And so, in the end, I think I developed a lot of, I hope, compelling arguments and conclusions that will inform the way people view this election and in the United States, I think, going forward. But, going in, I didn't have any really strong predispositions.
Any particularly interesting findings? I'm sure there were many, but anything that really sticks out in your mind?
Sure. The most powerful finding that comes out of the book is that white working class people, when they support radical candidates, often on the far right, it's usually folks who feel the deepest sense of loss. Social loss in terms of their disorientation in social hierarchies, economic loss in terms of lost wealth and stability in their employment and in their economic lives, and then political loss and the loss of power in the sense that you used to be in the center. And all of that comes back to a sense of nostalgia, of loss from the past into the present. And loss is a very powerful theme that motivates people to take extreme action.
So Amber, you're actually a part of this book. You were part of the author's research, and you're a Youngstown resident. You've been a Youngstown resident for several years. How did you come to be involved with this?
Phil actually had suggested to Justin that he speak with me regarding his research because I was a single mom and renovating a 100-year-old home that needed a lot. So it seemed like a decent person to ask some questions, I guess.
Right. What did you think about it? I mean, being approached about it or being asked to be involved with something like this, it's kind of a very different thing.
I was nervous. because I knew the working title had the phrase white working class politics in it, and it made me nervous to be associated with a race-specific research in general, because I don't find myself agreeing with most people of my race. I wanted to help Justin as much as I could because I felt like I was in a particularly interesting situation where I was younger and doing something that a lot of people weren't doing with a college education, but without decent gainful employment that was at above a poverty wage. I felt like I was going to be able to help him, at least with a different viewpoint.
And how do you, I don't know if you've gotten all the way through, how do you think that the project has come out?
I thought it was interesting in that he interviewed some people who had some things to say. This sounds really vague. There are people who are involved in the politics in Youngstown who he did get to interview. And there are things that were said that don't paint a pretty picture of the people we're surrounded by on any given day. The corruption is still very much part of the thread of this area, and the people who live here are still very much okay with it. It's what they thrive on, it's what they know, it's the evil that they know, they're okay with it. They're going to continue to vote that in as long as that is going to work out for them. So far it hasn't burned them or that they're cognizant of.
Phil, great event. Could you tell us a little bit about how this came together, what City Club's relationship is to this event?
Yeah, sure. So Tim Francisco and myself had met Justin Gest when he was here doing his research for several months, several years ago. And when it came time here for the book release, of course we wanted to do something, and he certainly wanted to do something like this in Youngstown. So we thought that this venue in particular, with the Center for Working Class Studies as well as the City Club, which did not exist at that particular period of time, was the right venue and the right partnership to more or less kind of sponsor and then organize and host this event tonight. So that's kind of how it came to be, and it really turned out well, I think.
Can you tell us a little bit about City Club, about what's the basis for it, and maybe some other things that you have going forward?
Yeah, sure. So City Club of the Mahoning Valley is a chapter of the City Club of Cleveland, which is an institution that's been around for over 100 years and is dedicated almost exclusively to like civil dialogue on a multitude of issues. Could be state, national, or local, hyperlocal issues. And so we formed a chapter here with their blessing and their assistance, and we had an inaugural event at Stambaugh Auditorium talking about economic development in the Mahoning Valley, which was very well attended. But we would like to do smaller events like this, which are a little bit more specific or like topic-wise. And so tonight was an example of what that would look like moving forward. So that is in essence the idea of what City Club is, and this is an example of one of the, I guess you kind of call it a smaller event in relation to the other things that we're doing at Stambaugh Auditorium. So yeah, this was a first venture at that, and I think it went well.